Hey guys, my name is Carmen Baker, and the issue that I've been working on this whole semester is the opioid epidemic. I'm currently at my home in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I'm at a place where for far too many addiction begins. Behind me are a lot of doctors' offices that specialize in a lot of things, but a lot of them prescribe opioids. Probably most of them prescribe opioids. And in 2017, according to the CDC, 58 out of 100 U.S. patients were prescribed opioids. And that, of course, leads to addiction. Addiction is a big problem that affects far too many in this country. And hopefully in this video I can expand upon this argument and expand upon how big pharmaceutical companies are responsible for this epidemic. And I hope I can direct these arguments specifically to those that blame big pharmaceutical companies.
As I said earlier, addiction is a really big problem in this country. I personally have firsthand experience with this. When I was a sophomore in high school, I tore my meniscus in my right knee twice. And both times I was prescribed OxyContin, but my mom limited my dosages, luckily. But I think back and I think, what if? What if I took too many? Would I still be here? Would I be addicted to something else? And this all goes back to the common theme of opioids. Are they prescribed too much? Is the main question. I previously wrote about how many people, when it comes to this issue, blame both pharmaceutical companies like Purdue and greedy politicians that take massive campaign donations from these companies. That being said, I have read many articles relating to this topic over the course of this semester, and I believe that most people blame big pharmaceutical companies. The main contributing factor to them being blamed over politicians, and the main reason that I blame them as well, is because of their initial misbranding of OxyContin in the mid-90s. This proved to be detrimental to thousands of people, in which they misbranded that opioids were non-addictive substances, which since then, studies have shown that opioids like OxyContin develop drug tolerance in patients, in which patients eventually feel the need to take more and more to achieve the same pain-relieving effects. This, of course, leads to addiction. Furthermore, in the 90s, companies not only misbranded their drugs, but according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, big pharmaceutical companies not only misbranded drugs, they reassured the medical community that patients would not become addicted to opioid pain relievers. Over the course of the decades, big pharma companies have found ways to spread their vast influence. Outside of donating to campaigns, which I will cover later, they influence physicians by giving them compensation for the more brand name opioids they prescribed. So the more pills they prescribed people, the more they were paid. This is almost the same as endorsing addiction in my eyes. To continue, companies like Purdue targeted specific parts of the country at the onset of the opioid epidemic, specifically suburban white communities, such as places like New Hampshire was hit very hard, and West Virginia. And they felt that they were vulnerable. Today, 130 plus people die every day from opioid-related drug overdoses. These are the main reasons that I blame big pharmaceutical companies for the opioid epidemic. Another important thing surrounding the reason that many people, including myself, blame big pharmaceutical companies for the opioid epidemic is their use of price gouging. Price gouging is when a company significantly and excessively raises the products of their prices for no reason. In which, although there is laws prohibiting this, Big Pharma has done it recently. They have risen their prices exponentially, including for drugs that reverse opioid overdoses. In this instant, Avizio, the drug that I mentioned that reduces opioid overdoses, costs roughly $4,000, but it costs big pharmaceutical companies about a nickel to produce. In this way, they are further contributing to the opioid epidemic. Now, I would love to show you all a video of California Representative Katie Porter and her questioning of the former Celgene CEO. Celgene is a biopharmaceutical company.
Do you know what this number is? Does it ring any bells?
But I think you're referring to my compensation in some way.
Yeah, well, in some way. This was your compensation in 2017 for being CEO of Celgene, and that's a lot of money. It's 200 times the average American's income and 360 times what the average senior gets on Social Security. Now, of that 13 million, about 2.1 million came from your company hitting yearly earning targets. And more than half of the bonus formula was based on those targets. Any increase in the price of Revlimid would also increase your bonus by increasing earnings. Isn't that right, Mr. Ellis?
If revenues increased and expenses did not, then earnings would be enhanced. And
thank you. Mr. Ellis, in fact, the Oversight Committee found that if you hadn't increased the price of Revlimid, you wouldn't have gotten your bonus. Mr. Ellis, do you know how much you personally received in bonuses over 2 years, the last 2 years, just because Celgene raised the price of this one drug, Revlimid?
I receive very generous compensation, but I don't know the exact number that you're referring to.
In fact, you personally received $500,000 personally just by tripling the price of Revlimid. So to recap here, the drug didn't get any better. The cancer patients didn't get any better. You just got better at making money. You just refined your skills at price scouting.
To end, I believe I effectively have expanded upon the argument on why those victims of the opioid epidemic that blame pharma companies should indeed keep blaming them. Now I believe it is time for accountability and research. Accountability in the form of fines, which is already occurring, in which recently Purdue has pled guilty to 3 criminal charges, which is very good news. Furthermore, I believe the best way to fight this epidemic is through physical therapy. I'm not saying that opioids should be banned because they are useful in some situations and instances. With physical therapy, it uses many ways to rehab people based on their needs in particular, not as a collective like opioids do, but as in their needs in particular. If people embrace physical therapy to a higher degree, I believe this epidemic could come to an end. Overall, it is going to take everyone, including insurance companies and including the pharmaceutical companies themselves, because price gouging is not going to fix itself. Throughout this presentation, I mainly use facts from the Department of Health and Human Services and the Campaign for Sustainable RX Pricing. Also, for the video of Representative Katie Porter, I referred to the Independence YouTube channel. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you.